Greetings and welcome to week 1 of Scientific Research Methodology MOOC. In this section of M1.5 Elements of Research Methodology Part 2, we will consider experimental design and data documentation and analysis. Let us now consider experimental design. The actual execution of the research study would be through designing the experimental methods that would drive it to a conclusive outcome. Here, the research methods have to be decided in terms of the variables chosen and all other resources required. Taking the example of the pharmacokinetic study, we would discuss this in detail. The researcher has to first set up the methodology for the preparation of the drug, so the protocols will have to be standardized and the formulation prepared will have to be checked for its purity as per the norms. The bacterial strain will have to be cultured in order to confirm the strain and that there are no contaminations. This culture will have to be maintained by regular subculturing and periodic checking for purity, as these are the model organisms chosen for the study. As per the variables chosen, the pilot study with the changing independent variables has to be carried out. Based on the pilot study, the actual experimentation will have to be carried out by manipulating the independent variable suitably. This is a logical flow of the experimental design. But there are many more subtle aspects which also need to be considered while structuring the experimental design. Recall the discussion regarding the variables to be considered. It was mentioned that the independent variable would be the concentration of the drug. But would that be the only variable that would affect the bacterial growth? I would request you to please pause the video and ponder over this. Thank you. Even those participants who may not be from the biological science discipline would be able to answer that no, this is not the only variable. There are other factors such as temperature of incubation, pH of the media, composition of the media, to name a few, that can influence the bacterial growth. Such independent variables, which the researcher had actually not factored in while framing the hypothesis or the research plan thereafter, but have a potential to exert effect on the dependable variable chosen, are called extraneous variables. Hence, care should be taken to eliminate all such extraneous variables while designing the experimental methods. This is usually achieved by carrying out the research methods under controlled conditions whereby all the other factors are maintained constant at their optimum conditions. When qualitative variables are considered, as in the observational studies, the researchers must ensure that the observations are recorded without any bias. Many empirical studies also have a control and an experimental group, both kept under the same conditions so that the treatment or experimentation technique is the only difference between the two. It is also very important to consider the minimum and maximum amount of data that needs to be gathered so that it can be statistically significant for further analysis. For example, number of readings to be taken, the number of animals required for every set of experiments, etc. In statistical terms, this is called sampling technique. The experimental design, once drafted, should be tried out by pilot study. If there is something not working out as per the plan, the researcher might have to reconsider the methods used earlier, maybe modify them or replace them with new protocols. Therefore, experimental redesigning is also an important point to be kept in mind. All the details with respect to the resources like chemicals, instruments, tools and techniques to be used, statistical tools of analysis should be an integral part of the experimental design. The researcher should not be in a hurry to finish the experiments planned, keep collecting data, and then wonder which statistical tests should be used to analyze this exhaustive data. A good amount of time should be invested in determining this prior to experimentation so that appropriate data is collected accordingly. Replication of the experimental study is also very critical in establishing the reliability and accuracy of the outcome of the research study. Therefore, the timeline should include the repetition of the sets of the experiments more than once. There would be more such obvious and hidden aspects that must be included while developing an experimental design.